I'll skip to the I won't bury the lead as it was buried in the delivery to me, but Perry comes out of the Brookings Institute. So he comes out of the black wing of the Brookings Institute. So that should say a lot about what is being done here by a reference A to Black Power, which again is very slickly done in a more modern form of the Nixonian approach. Because again, in Black Power scorecard, Black Power is not defined as anything along the lines of the militancy of the Touré popularizing of the phrase. So it's not about nationalist control of communities. It's not about socialism. It's not about pan-Africanism or internationalism. It's not about even radical African centeredness. It's well, as we'll see, it's Black Power rooted in some of the standard economic mechanistic approaches in this country's economy. So what I thought I would do is, rather than go through some of the book, is go through some of this discussion that Perry had with recently with that was posted online just 9 days ago at the Enoch Pratt Library with WEAA's own Carsana Wise Whitehead, K, or Dr. K as she is affectionately known, on WEAA in Baltimore there at Morgan State University. And I must say it's unfortunate, and I feel like I don't mind saying here that I feel like the well was poisoned between us when she arrived at Morgan, because the person that brought her in was decidedly bringing her in to keep people like me off the air. And since she's been at Morgan State, I think I've one time, I think twice. I'm sorry, twice, because I was on the Hip Hop Chronicles once. So twice in almost 10 years now, maybe 8 years since I've been on WEAA. Which is really unfortunate, given the time and work but it's also unfortunate. More importantly than my presence is that it's also unfortunate because it's not just me; it's the wing of thought, the broad left wing of thought that I and others represent, that was targeted for removal from the airwaves. And I think when it comes to these discussions, it is, I admit it's frustrating, even if I understand why it's happening, that right here at my own university, right down the street, right on the other side of campus, right here they're having these conversations that I can't be part of, especially when my and others' contributions would be really important, I think, and helpful. But let's have a little bit of a look at this discussion. And so we're going to pick it up here where something is actually, this is what I'm saying, like, this is where you get to see a little bit of what I'm talking about in terms of the relative sophistication of the approach here. So let's just check out this segment.
Everything from air quality, but were some surprising things,
and that's what I wanted to get to.
Yeah. So yes. we can talk, but I'll.
So sorry, he's talking about initially how does he do the scorecard? First of all, when you Black Power scorecard as a phrase is the title of the book, and then I think it's mentioned maybe one other time in the book. So if you think that when you get the thing you're going to see like some sort of scorecard, that's not what you're going to get. And his assessment, the way he develops his score, which you don't actually see, is because the way the book is promoted, you think maybe you're going to see like, oh, black people have a Black Power rating of 72. But he doesn't do anything like that. But he uses these basic, black home ownership, which he, as I think we'll see in one of the clips, equates to black people living longer. And I don't know if enough evidence is there to show the correlation or the causation as opposed to the correlation. I don't know. But that's what he's doing. So it's not Black Power based on nationalistic control or electoral political power or impact on policy or redistribution of wealth or wealth itself. It's home ownership. Now I can't even remember, but stuff like that. And then I think we'll see some of it being discussed here. Here we go.
That exceed national averages that exceed expectations. And that was also my goal, to find what a city is predicted to be, and then look if it exceeds that prediction. It's like saying, if you're predicting the weather's going to be 75 degrees, and it's 80, either something's wrong with the model for measuring, or there's something going on in the environment. While we know that there's nothing ever wrong with my models, but something's probably going on in the environment. So I also just look for places that are exceeding expectations when it comes to well-being.
I'm so glad you kind of laid it out that way, because we have this conversation a lot in Baltimore. You're familiar with Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of being ground zero for redlining, in terms of the impact of the environment, in terms of thinking about police brutality, all the factors that you talk about in your book, which lowers life expectancy.
That's right.
So I want to start narrow, just where you started, and then kind of make it broad, because I know many people are from Baltimore here. We know that in certain communities in Baltimore City, if you use Freddie Gray's community, that if you just go 5 miles away to where, say, Loyola University, or what they call the White L is, there's a 20-year life expectancy in a 5-mile radius.
Right.
Just being born 5 miles away, you're adding 20 years, all things staying the same.
Right.
To your life. Can you kind of drill down a little bit to help us really understand why all the factors we talked about at the top, from redlining to poverty to police brutality to the collapse of the schools, all of that, along with what you talk about in your book, the lack of home ownership, takes away years from your life?
Yeah, it's not about geography as much as, while we can certainly identify life expectancy, what it means is the neighborhood conditions in those places are not conducive for flourishing. And so we certainly point to redlining because, and most people know me through my work on housing devaluation.
Yes. That's how I know you.
Yeah, and so my research in 2018, we looked at homes in black neighborhoods and we compared them to homes in white neighborhoods. And we controlled for, attended to everything from education, crime, walkability, all those fancy Zillow metrics. And what we found is that homes in black communities, after controlling for those factors to get an apples-to-apples comparison, homes in black communities are still underpriced by 23%, about $48,000 per home. Cumulatively, it's about $156 billion in lost equity. And just to put this in perspective so that people can understand, $156 billion would have financed more than 4 million black-owned businesses based upon the average amount black people.
So here again, this is what I'm saying. This is his approach to Black Power. So and he references McKinsey, which I think is interesting because remember, McKinsey's involvement in buying power mythology has largely been around, as we've talked a lot about here, around the positive impact on the overall economy that a reduction in racist harm against black people would mean. In other words, as he's saying here, if you all don't devalue black homes in this racist way, you would generate 100 and whatever he said $1 billion, which could help all these black businesses. Now, of course, what he leaves out is a number of things, starting with, and I should find the link again. We need to, I don't even know, did I even clip that? If I didn't clip it, I need to clip it. Starting with Renee's discussion of black home ownership on Saturdays with Renee, over there, of course, on Black Liberation Media. What is also missing here is this idea that somehow the value of a home automatically means money that can be used, in this case, just by black people for the black community. So as if we're not dealing with people overwhelmingly who are going to be homeowners, yes, but with a mortgage that is owned by a bank who is going to make most of the money from, well, depending on when you sell and who you sell and how you, but they're going to make their cut. They're going to have to be paid back. So the value, this homeowner value that he's pointing to is not going to be a measurement of what black families have and can use any way they want. It's going to be a measurement of what wealth is generated by the sales of these homes that is to some significant amount going to banks And to the extent it goes to anybody in the Black community, it's not organized in some collective way that can be used for the community. So these throwing these numbers around, and then by the way, it requires this enormous if that white supremacy will dissipate to the point where white people will value, white lenders really will value their homes equitably without a desire to have white people not have to live with Black people. That is a huge if. All right.
It would have paid for more than 8 million four-year degrees based upon the average amount Black people use pay for public school tuition.
Again, where is this tuition going to, wait a minute. How is the value of your home and the money in your account going to help get my child to college for free? This is what I'm saying. It doesn't, in other words, who's sitting there over this 150 billion saying these XYZ Black kids get their school paid, XYZ Black businesses get funded? Who's doing that?
Replace the pipes in Flint, Michigan 3,000 times over, would have covered nearly all of Hurricane Katrina damage, is double.
But again, the Katrina damage and the Flint, Michigan damage have nothing to do with a lack of revenue, have nothing to do with Black people and others being poor. The poverty of the Black community is not why the governor and all of them did whatever they did with the switching out the pipes and this, that, and the third and poisoned the people. It's not why the levees broke, however you want to remember that history in New Orleans. That's the poverty of the Black community did not break the levees. So there is an absence of will. There is an absence of political will to properly fund Black communities or to equitable give benefits really to anybody, certainly Black people. But the way he's framing it here is as if, Black people could do all this stuff. We just don't have the revenue. And if we had our homes valued properly, we could. And first of all, why would Black people why would you even want to put out there that it's up to Black people to fund schools and fix levees? This is a governmental issue. That's a state issue. I don't want to, again, we've already funded the levees in the schools through the 20-some trillion dollar GDP in this country. Why are we now saying we got to get our homes valued properly?
Double the annual burden of the opioid crisis. It's a big number. And it's one of the reasons why I say, like it keeps my teeth white, that there's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism can't solve. Right? That when things go wrong in Black communities, what do? We blame Black people.
Yep.
We don't look at the underlying conditions and policies that impact those numbers. So for me, when you're talking about Baltimore, you have to talk about redlining, but not as something that has happened in the past.
Right. Something that's happening now.
Those things certainly had some antecedents in the past, but it tells you that something's going on now in these places. And it is absolutely clear. Revenue and resources predict for outcome. So I typically put it.
I do want to say, I want to repeat that.
Antecedents in the past, but it tells you that something's going on now in these places. And it is absolutely clear. Revenue and resources predict for outcome. So
So that's where I'm saying it gets a little more tricky than the standard approach here. This is a sophisticated Brookings Institute approach. He's right. It is policy. It is white supremacy. It is investment drives opportunity and makes all the difference. That's the point. But then why keep peppering it and going back and forth with this notion that if Black businesses were properly funded, if Black homes were properly valued, everything would function. That's like saying, if, as Malcolm pointed out, a chicken laid a duck egg, it would be quite a revolutionary chicken. The economy works well for the 800 people worth $6.2 trillion. So I just wanted to let me skip ahead just a little bit here, but I wanted that part to play where he says investment is what nothing. In fact, he goes on to say nothing grows without investment.
This way, if you're growing a head of lettuce, and the lettuce isn't growing, you don't blame the lettuce.
Right.
You look to see if the soil's enriched. You look to see if it's getting sunlight, if it's getting rainwater. You never blame the lettuce. And so for me, when I see communities in Baltimore, in Chicago, in New Orleans, I'm looking at the soil. I'm looking whether it's getting rainwater, whether it's getting sunlight. And so for me, and let me be clear, there are lots of places where Black people are thriving. But it's not by coincidence. It's because they're getting investment. Nothing grows without investment.
Nothing grows without investment. Now, the trick bag, though, is that being from Brookings, his point is the investment should come from private equity and corporations and not the state. Because ultimately he's correct. And the state should be the one determining this, not some private company. So it's almost like it would be fitting for a Brookings Institute to have a well-argued position coming from a Black spokesperson arguing for private commercial market solutions to what are public policy and investment and problems, or just public policy problems.
Throughout your transportation, but home ownership also predicts for civic engagement. Ownership in general, particularly for the descendants of the enslaved, for people who were once owned. To own property.
That's mythology, by the way. The idea that people who don't own can't be involved or are never involved is mythology. That's part of it's encouraged that way. There's always the idea that only homeowners care about their community. So, well, on one hand, you could make it so everybody is really an owner and has more of an input and stake in their community. But we've also seen where people who rent, who are in subsidized housing, organize and rebel and join movements all the time to improve their communities. So that's not, again, home ownership is not some magical solution to these problems.
To hire employees, it means something different, right? But when I say home ownership, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about at an individual level. When home ownership rates are higher overall in an area, that's where you get better outcomes. Okay. So for me, what I also do in the book, if you see, I want to beat back against this individualistic notion of wealth building. We have to think about community wealth, what it means to be a strong community. Because when you have community wealth, you have better outcomes. And too often, the conversation is about, how can I be rich? Right? And we know too well that there's too many nefarious ways to get rich. I joke, I don't joke. I say in the first chapter.
Now you do want the closed caption.
Who famously said in the album 444, what's better than one billionaire? Two, especially if they're the same hue as you.
So, can I just be real with everybody here? It bothered me that a book that came out so much longer after mine, that deals somewhat with the similar topic, would quote the same artist in the same album, but in a very, very different way. Because I noticed that in the book too. But look at what he's doing here. This is very slick. This is the Black capitalist redefinition of Black power. This is a Brookings redefinition. So community wealth now is more than one Black billionaire. So he sprinkles these seeming like gems but they're framed in these very Brookings styled ways. It's slick.
Now, I critique that because it makes little sense. In this regard, it's always been about the means of production. If you're making $1 billion means that you're going to suppress somebody's wages, not give somebody health care, extract wealth and opportunity, which always happens in the music industry, 1 billionaire is not better than 2. And for the descendants of the enslaved, this is what was, it's almost personal for me. That we've always had people who've mastered how to be a better capitalist all throughout time. I mean, from Walker to all these rich people, they
He almost said C. Dolores Tucker. That's funny.
White capitalism, right? And so for me, I always go back to the ultimate exploitive practice, which was slavery, right? Would we ever ask what's better than 1 slaveholder? 2, right? No, absolutely not. So why are we saying, let's make more billionaires? Now, I just want to be clear. I am not against individuals making money. I want people to make money. I don't want them to make money on the backs of communities. And we need to be very disciplined about our businesses, who we're selling to, what we're selling. These are the practices that we need to hold each other accountable to. The whole title of Black Power Scorecard, in essence, is an ask for us to hold ourselves accountable to outcomes. Every election cycle, Black issues are shoehorned in at the last minute,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and when in fact we need a set of criteria and metrics that we're always examining. How is home ownership? How is business ownership? How is the environment? How is safety, crime, strong families? I talk about families in this. I talk about these things. But for me, we should not have to wait the last minute for a candidate to say, well, here's what I'm doing for Black communities. We already should be able to see what you're doing for Black communities, right? So for me, I am very disciplined about saying, here are the most significant factors that literally adds years to your life or takes them away. And what we won't find in the book, you won't find conversations about how many comedians are going to the White House.
No.
You won't hear about how many Grammys Beyonce won. You won't hear about changing the Little Mermaid black.
Right.
Like, these things are immaterial.
You don't talk about the performative thing.
No.
It's about building that wealth.
Swag surfing on the White House lawn, that is not it.
See, this is
No. And so we just have to be very disciplined about the things that matter most. And I'm not trying to throw shade, but oftentimes we've accepted consolation prizes in exchange for, instead of real policy.
Right.
And so for me, it's like, let's work on policy. And let me say one more thing real quick about this. So much talk about executive order, right?
The DEI,
about DEI and affirmative action. I want to make things clear, and follow me through. DEI and affirmative action have never been the goals of Black Power.
No.
We've always sought to get mainstream access to capital markets, to get home ownership, everyone else gets home ownership, to have the ability to have clean environments. What many DEI programs have been is sort of a recognition that companies, governments discriminate. And so we need ways to remedy and work towards access, right? But they were never the goals. Now, let's be clear, the current administration and members of it.
So I think I had it a little bit off, and I'm even looking back in my notes as he's talking there. So it wasn't, he wasn't saying, as I suggested a moment ago, that he's quoting Jay-Z and saying that having more Black billionaires is good. But what he does is he puts all of the solutions back on the same market fundamentalism that would produce that exploitative relationship and then create billionaires. So he's saying on the one hand, and this is why I'm saying it's very sophisticated. It's definitely much more sophisticated than most of the financial literacy guru folks. But ultimately, as you just heard him say there, Black Power was about access to capital markets, he said. I can't imagine more of a more incorrect definition, but I can imagine one that definition being one shaped over the last 60, 70 years by the Nixon types that wanted to redefine Black Power along the lines of Black capitalism. So so on the one hand, he's critical of the celebrity thing, but his criticism isn't to say we need public policy that will redistribute wealth. He's saying we want public policy that will redistribute opportunity. And I think that's part of the trick bag. Black Power was not and should not be about access to capital markets. It should not be access to more or policy that drives more private equity funding into Black businesses. That's where I think the slickness of his argument is more shown.
A lot of that can happen at the municipal level. Certainly the appraisal gaps that you see in development, we can have state level policy addressing that. So just as a framework, I believe in starting local and then scaling upwards. And so for me, over the next few years in particular, I'm going to be working in communities all over across the country. I mentioned Lanier, but I'm working with people all over the country who are trying to figure out ways to do things locally. Because there will come a time, I do believe this, it might be people fear that we may not go back to this, but there will be a political window of opportunity where we have to put forth policies. We better be testing them at the local level, right? And then when we have our opportunity, resource and codify them. So start locally. We do need sort of tax rebate innovations because when you have devaluation and you create development, a lot of people can't keep pace with the inevitable tax increases. So we can do some interesting things in terms of tax rebates, TIFs, other practices, and I haven't figured them out yet. But that's what we're supposed to do in this time. If we're going to invest locally, we need to figure out systems.
All right. So, I might come back to some of it and look more at his work, but essentially, I think you get the gist, as I did, that he is redefining Black Power away from its more radical origins or understandings, even in sort of base surface level understandings, and he's arguing for policy that would sort of grease the mechanism of private investment, Black business, entrepreneurialism. It's a very, again, Brookings. So just to get an idea, when he was talking about some of the projects that he's working on, I did look up a couple of them, and this is something that he co-authored about buying back the block, building Black wealth through community real estate ownership. Again, it's a Brookings, Institute publication from 2023. Brookings Metro is collaborating with developers and community partners in Baltimore, Cleveland, and Detroit as they attempt to buy back the block. Specifically, our new Buy Back the Block Lab is studying and advising these efforts of a cohort of community-based, mission-driven investors as they purchase commercial real estate in corridors within majority Black neighborhoods. In a 2022 analysis, Brookings scholars found that few Black households own commercial real estate, especially if we exclude rental properties. Only 3% of Black households own non-residential commercial real estate, compared to 8% of white households. For white households that do own commercial real estate, the average white household owns $34,000 of it, compared to $3,600 in the Black community. In fact, 81% of the value of non-residential CRE is owned by the top 1% of households that own any. In comparison, for owner-occupied housing wealth, the top 1% owns 16% of the value. This is a major missed opportunity for Black wealth building, given that non-residential commercial residential enterprise, right? Commercial, oh my goodness. Commercial real estate. Sorry, just commercial real estate. That's what oh my goodness. This is a major missed opportunity for Black wealth building, given that non-residential commercial real estate generated $512 billion in revenue in 2020. Income concentrated so heavily in white owners contributes to a wealth gap that sees the median white household $188,000 to $24,000, or 7.8 times more than Black households. This means that CRE owners in majority Black zip codes are getting less rental income than they otherwise could because of the undervalued properties. Why are they undervalued? Yes, it's racist. And the racism impact plays out materially because it's Black businesses, or it's businesses, whatever their color, whatever their racial ownership, that are targeting poor Black consumers. So they're saying that this majority Black zip code undervaluation results in 171 billion in retail losses in retail space for owners of these properties. Why local governments want to help buy back the block? So you just heard Perry talking about the starting at the local municipal level. There's, previous research shows that Black and Latino Americans face 10 to 13% higher tax burden. Commercial real estate, which includes all income producing properties such as retail, office, industrial, and multifamily rental or apartments, plays an important role in balancing local government budgets. Property taxes are an aggregate of 31% of all revenues. So they're saying if you buy up the block and get a proper valuation, you can get more tax revenue for the local municipality. In addition to identifying and structuring deals, the lab will investigate the role of nonprofit intermediaries in facilitating the Black commercial real estate ownership, as well as that of state and federal economic development policies that can help break the cycle of devaluation. So my point of just looking some of that up is just that this is the solution. And again, as I was arguing on Renee's show earlier, that we do, what we need are more above board legal equivalent arguments about how to approach all of this, so that we can both debunk the myths that are inherent to that argument, but have something to rally people around in terms of what they could expect and maybe shoot for. So again, everything keeps coming back to concentrated, monopolized ownership of property, concentrated, accumulated ownership of business. And to the extent that there is a targeting of municipal, state, and federal governments, it is to find ways to benefit nonprofits and corporations in helping improve the valuation of commercial real estate in Black communities, which would benefit the owners of businesses in those communities, most of which are not going to be Black. And even if they are Black, so what? Instead, we should be making calls that say, look, again, policy should be that says if whoever owns these businesses in this land is generating wealth, redistribute the wealth. We got to stop with this. I got to be the perfect business person. I got to be the perfect consumer. I got to figure out the right way to get the property values up in my community so that I can make more money for the owners of businesses. I mean, it's all over the place. There was another project that they mentioned that they were doing that I looked into in Edmondson Village in Baltimore. Community investors unite to bring shopping center back to life. So you remember they were talking about the commercial real estate and improving valuation. So the argument is that after years of neglect, Richardson's company, Chicago Trend, purchased the shopping center for $17 million in August of 2023. As CEO of the company, he's working with small local investors and community members to modernize the center and attract new businesses and visitors that will help make a valuable community or commodity, will help make it a valuable commodity to the neighborhood. Chicago Trend is investing $3 million in renovations with a long-term goal of attracting new stores and chain restaurants. Its major attractions include a shopping center and a primary healthcare center. A lot of things are coming. The Popeyes just got a remodel done. Kimmy's is doing remodeling. There's a lot of stores that are coming also, said Muninder Singh, owner of America's Best Wings. Baltimore City is investing $7.5 million into the development, and Maryland has sent $2 million as well. The center also has funding from 200 community investors who have a goal of improving things for the community. 57% of our investors are African American, 42% are women, and over 50% reside in low and moderate income neighborhoods. So they are people who are going to protect and respect and patronize the shopping center in a different way from an ownership lens, Richardson said. So this is one of the projects that they're talking about, but as you can see, it's not something that's going to be targeted to specifically deal with the Black inequality or Black inequality. And as you can see, Nielsen, JP Morgan, Brookings, this is who supports these kinds of efforts, the city of Baltimore, because the argument is if you invest a little bit and raise the commercial rental valuation, property valuation, you get more valuation for the businesses, higher valuation for the businesses, and you get a higher tax revenue for the city. And of course, you can do all of this without challenging capitalism or redistributing wealth or raising any uncomfortable issues. And you have to be fully dependent on these sort of partners to get anything done. And there's your leadership team: Lanier Richardson, who was talked about by Andre Perry. And other than the co-founder, it's a very diverse set of folks in the leadership. But the leadership is all there to attract revenue and ultimately support from. So that's how, again, just quickly, that's how Black Power can be discussed at the Brookings Institute without upsetting or scaring anybody.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.